Hello, everybody. So in this vlog, I'm going to walk you through the design process behind my Padlet and explain both the strategic and intentional choices that I made while creating it. Um, so the first thing that I did here was in the introduction, I wanted to put a strong visual that kind of represents a metaphor for the whole principle of universal design for learning. And so I included a signpost here that represents, different ways that students can go, different directions that they can take, on their path to learning. So that's the first thing that I did. I started out with a short introduction, and I grouped everything into the major groupings that the textbook gave us. So start off with mastery strategies, and these are all in blue, and then you just scroll down to um, understanding strategies. And then I think the next one is self-expressive, which would go down here. Oh no, interpersonal, excuse me. Interpersonal strategies, so on and so forth. I wanted it to be in scroll format because I wanted it to feel more like a visual map of learning rather than just a traditional checklist of strategies. So I chose the stream layout because it allows ideas to flow in a way that mirrors how learning actually happens, which is not in rigid boxes, but as connected, evolving concepts, one into the other. The stream format made it feel more reflective and narrative, which aligned well with UD's emphasis on flexibility and learner-centered design. The specific strategies that I selected were very intentional. I chose New American Lecture and direct instruction because they represent traditional approaches that are still important when thoughtfully designed through a UDL lens. I wanted to show that even structured, teacher-centered methods can become inclusive when they incorporate multiple means of representation and engagement. And I will say this, these two strategies, the direct instruction and New American Lecture, kind of surprised me. When I was growing up, so to speak, in the teacher world and, learning how to teach, going through my bachelor's degree and my credentialing process, a lot of those strategies that they teach you there that emphasize are, the constructivist type of learner-centered, inquiry-based, problem-based learning, um, and not a lot of emphasis is placed on direct instruction. And in fact, I felt like it was almost like a taboo to even kind of talk about that, and implement that, even though we all do it. We all, or at least I do. Get up there and I present new content, and I model it, and I go through the all the different checkpoints of direct instruction, and I was just kind of surprised and kind of reflecting on my own bias, and realizing that there actually is a place for um, teacher-centered instruction sometimes, especially when you're um, introducing brand new content, so it's very important there. So we go down here. So there's direct instruction. So I just, created a little um, blurb on it, and then a personal example. So say like I'm in an ESL writing class, teaching sentence construction. So, first model several examples, highlighting key points and explaining why each element is effective. And then the next step would be the guidance, right? So guiding students through small steps, and then prompting them to create their own sentences while I give them real-time feedback. So pretty straightforward, but effective. Um, the New American Lecture, I really like this one actually because it's like direct instruction, but it breaks things down into smaller increments, which is really helpful. Even to me as a learner, it's hard to sit through. I remember when I was undergrad sitting through I had this one English class I took, Shakespeare, and the instructor would just go on and just drone on for 2 hours. And so, I really didn't, I just took a lot of notes, and I got through the class by going back and going over my notes and everything. But just looking back on that, it wasn't an effective, it was just too much cognitive overload. And so I like the new American lecture because it breaks it down into short focus segments, with active learning exercises or, reflections and things like that that really reinforce, learning. So let's see, I got a personal example there, delivery options. Yeah, so like, New American Lecture aligns with UDL by providing multiple means of representation through a combination of, oral explanations, visual aids, interactive prompts, and also multiple means of engagement. So, because we have multiple opportunities for learners to process and reflect and actively participate, so we're breaking things down into very short increments, and so it's not so much teacher centered as it is learner centered in this respect, because the teacher is giving information or building on information and then putting it back in the hands of the students very quickly, and letting them process with it. So it's very digestible that way. So let's see, I included graduated difficulty, but understanding strategies. So I really like the compare and contrast strategy. Um, it's especially when you're teaching things like literature or art or things like that, you can really it's very easy to you know, put two things together, especially when you're like analyzing like metaphors and things like that. Um, so this strategy helps learners, it helps them notice nuances, between, subtle differences or subtle, similarities between two opposing things or two different things. And it requires them to critically think about those things. Um, so, see, we have concept attainment, and let's see what else. There was another one that I was interpersonal. I really like the interpersonal strategies. Jigsaw, I've used that a lot. That's very effective in, just breaking a large chunk of information down and, assigning it to different groups of students, and, and having them um, come up with the the lesson themselves. Basically, it's very constructivist, so, you're going to have each group present their own ideas and their own um, segment of the knowledge, that they're supposed to be presenting. And so it's a very good way of having the whole class, construct knowledge in that way. So they become the learners become the experts, on a specific segment of content. And so, it promotes accountability and peer learning and social interdependence. Um, and it also, it helps them to synthesize diverse perspectives. Let's see, decision making. Let's see, the self-expressive category. We have mystery here. So yeah, I really like mystery, which they learn to solve puzzle problems and identify patterns, which is really good in, like teaching writing or teaching literature and things like that, because, literature and writing, it's all, it's full of patterns. You start noticing things like, like little ideas, that maybe authors like start playing with throughout their work, and those ideas, they turn into themes, and, and so you can, build from there. So very cool for building analytical skills and strengthening comprehension. Um, and It provides multiple means of engagement through curiosity-driven problem solving, multiple means of representation through integration of diverse evidence sources, and action expression by allowing learners to communicate solutions through oral, written, or visual formats. So this option here really just it hits the ball out of the park, so to speak. Um, as far as UDL connections, because it just hits it hits all three major branches of UDL in that way. So yeah, it was just I really enjoyed going through this, and overall my goal was to design the Padlet that feels intentional, inclusive, and aligned with real-world instructional design practices while showing a deep understanding of both the strategies and the UDL principles. So thank you again for uh, being here, and I will talk to you all later.